रहने दो अभिनय, अभिनय। हेलो।
On the behalf of Board of Economics, I welcome you all to this distinguished lecture by Dr. Abhiroop Mukhopadhyay, Indian Statistical Adjustment Data. Now I invite dignitaries to the panel. Professor Vijay Rao, Honorable Vice Chancellor of University of Hyderabad, and the chairperson of this session. Dr. Abhiroop. And Professor R.J., Head of School of Economics. Now I request Professor Devashish Acharya sir to introduce the chairperson and our distinguished speaker.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. Professor Vijay Rao, Honorable Vice Chancellor, University of Hyderabad. Professor R.J., Dean School of Economics. Professor Abhiroop Mukhopadhyay, our distinguished speaker of the day. Colleagues, guests, and my students. The School of Economics welcomes you all to this distinguished lecture. We are delighted to have Professor Vijay Rao as the chairperson for today's lecture. Professor Vijay Rao, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, University of Hyderabad, former senior professor, Head of Biology, Dean Faculty at the Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, Tirupati, Andhra Pradesh. He was associated with the Biology Department at Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai for about 24 years, and served as senior professor and chair of the biology program before moving to IISER Tirupati in 2008. Professor Rao is a PhD from the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and he worked as a research scientist at Yale University Medical School before joining there from Mumbai. Professor Rao is a fellow of all three national academies in India, Sir J.C. Bose Awadi from the Department of Science and Technology. He has made fundamental contributions in the areas of genome biology and cellular regulations and adaptations. He published about 160 peer-reviewed international publications with high citations and impact. His publications range from experimental to theoretical biology, to chemistry and physics. The person of ideas, Professor Rao's passion has been reaching the young minds. And we always find Professor Rao speaking on a variety of subjects. In fact, I had the opportunity of listening to him in Big Five's wonderful leadership program, where the title of the talk was How to Make Ourselves Interesting. So I thought, there are a lot of first-year students, so we should also know our vice chancellor. Thank you, Professor Rao. Dr. Abhiroop Mukhopadhyay is a professor at the Economics and Planning Unit, Indian Statistical Institute, Jubilee. He holds a PhD from Pennsylvania State University. He is a development economist of Abhiroop. Abhiroop's specialization in econometric methods applied to education in developing countries, particularly India. His recent research interests include the impact of improved school infrastructure on rural school attendance, the design of teacher transfer programs, and the influence of human capital distribution on growth and development. Dr. Mukhopadhyay's work also addresses public policy issues, notably the National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, examining its implementation of political economy and its effect on education and public. Abhiroop has published in high-impact journals. He has given honors and awards to his credit, including Hyderabad Bond Fellowship, Sir Ratan Tata Fellowship, Thomas Postdoctoral Fellowship, honorary research positions at Global Labour Organization, University of Carlos, Madrid, and the University of Connecticut, just to name a few. So let's welcome the chairperson and distinguished speaker of the day, Mr. Round of applause. And I now hand over the session to our chairperson, Professor Vijay Rao. I just asked him what is the meaning of the word Abhiroop. Abhiroop means very beautiful. It is not areas that he covers are also very, very brutal and extremely relevant for the country. So I want to formally just call him Abhiroop to this beautiful university, to this very interesting and enlightened our lives in economics. And I'm sure your presence here will do a lot of good to them because you bring such ideas. We are just begun celebrating the golden jubilee year of University of Hyderabad by celebrating knowledge. Essentially, we invite people and we ask them to tell us about interesting. I think life is interesting, and it can be more interesting. So therefore, this event is essentially to clear you about human capital in India, lenses old and new. Very nice, old and new. Lenses, so I think we are all here now. My only request to young audience here is to ensure that you ask them tough questions. It is very important to ask tough questions to tough seekers. But then that amplifies the learning process. There is no learning without asking tough questions. Fundamental questions. And actually, when it is very, very enlightening and very useful, you don't have to remember anything. You actually internalize when you ask tough questions. Answers get internalized. And that will be very useful for you in future. So our agenda is very simple. Just listen to Abhiroop and take the insights from him. I'm going to be just an audience and to speak, but I also will have some questions. Like, I'm not an economist, but I have enough bandwidth. So thank you, Abhiroop, for coming by. You are here for more time. We'll see you really soon. Have you interacted with enough people? Okay, very, very good. Very good. Generally, distinguished speakers come the same day, they talk and fly off. That's not a good model. All the distinguished speakers 2-3 days ahead. You don't get money. And ensure that you get the best from him. Which is very good. So I think this is called paisa vasool in Maharashtra. This is a good word. Economically very sensible word. तो पैसा वसूल तो हो गया, हम भी बैठेंगे, हम सुनेंगे. So Abhiroop, धन्यवाद for coming here and it's really lovely. I really like this podcast because it is compact. It's really watching us with piercing eyes, and this all has his best things. So thank you very much. I will go down there now. Yeah. Thank you very much, sir. I don't have too much to say here. A good student of economics. Thank you. Just take a few minutes. What I'm trying to do is I want to say that the economics department is also very interesting place. It is very interesting work. So I'm just trying to tell you what they did there. First of all, good morning to everyone. I welcome Professor Vijayarao. He was very busy and he could give his time to come and spend some time on that case. Professor Abhiroop, who came in 3 days back, we organized a workshop for the MA students. So he was introducing cross-sectional econometry for 3 days. The morning sessions, afternoon, one of his students was here. Presented one type of full stream. So in that sense, we had an interesting 3-day period in the department. A lot of students liked it because generally what happens is when starts the 3-day workshop, but the 3rd day you need to return session, you don't get people. Suddenly you may see that the whole audience, the stage is full, people are there. So there looks to be the interest that is there. So one sense, thanks for coming and spending some time with our students. I just want to tell a few minutes because I don't want to stay much time. One of the things about the Department of Economics is There's a heterodox school. I think there's only heterodox school that exists in India, right? We teach same rigor in what is called classical systems, Marxism, as well as neoclass. So in that sense, we are an heterodox school trying to present students with different opinions, asking them students who may never study the subtype of school of analysis. And we have a set a large set of tools that we conclude based on their history, politics, and stuff that influence the students. Lots of schema that exists in that part. And we are also asking that maybe we also should introduce some of the cross section. Everyone, let me start off with first thanking and the students who have this who listen for 3 days will go on and on. I hope that it's compensated with something. And it's a pleasure to be here. University is truly beautiful. It's very stimulating. It's very nice to be here. I hope to come back next time. So, the talk today, actually, it's interesting. It touches on many things that it's sometimes very nice that it's happening in the CG room. Because you will see as I go and discuss various topics on which I work and I know something, that, what I'm an economist, the issue of human capital, that's the education, and its connection to the economy, is now not a simple matter of just asking the Pralika. The word Pralika itself has many meanings. And it's very interesting that Vice Chancellor did give a talk on how to make yourself interesting. Because you will see that the new lenses now actually have different definitions of what being educated is. So the one, if I can say, disclaimer, I would say that I'm not here to postulate a bigger, grander theory of human capital and its link to economy. I'm an experimentalist in the language of science. It's my job to kind of try to give you facts. And while, of course, I'm aware that what you look at is influenced by the genre you belong to, and you can take the same facts and construct your grand theory. So whether it's a liberal school or it's not a neoclassical school, everything really matters. You can take my results and you can postulate your own stories around it. But the facts are what you should look at. You should see if you can read them or not. So, when people talk about Indian education generally, it's a rather dismal story, to be honest. And we are typically lamenting about what a graph like that shows. It is just a way to tell you that, about only 40% of people in rural India, for example, can read, and only 25% get their tuition. And if you can kind of see those lines are more simple, you can say rating coming down, getting worse. So there is a lot of discussion between leaders, history, videos, teachers, and so this one story of what to say, kind of including. And so in line with that, the idea is always that what should we do to learning levels of Indian children? So there is this idea that for some reason the public sector is failing. And so if you talk to people who work on the economics of education, there's a lot of emphasis on trying to understand what are the kind of interventions required to raise levels of learning, to improve test scores are one dimension of that. And we are trying out, and Andhra is actually, undivided Andhra was actually an important part of the story in trying out various incentive structures in public schools to increase institutional capacity. Perhaps we should give up on public sector altogether, give vouchers to people to study in private schools. Maybe we should try out some technology, maybe some pedagogy. So there are all these things that people have talked about and tried. Suffice it to say that while they have worked at small scales, they have not seen spectacular success at larger scale. And so this is not to say that these are not important, but so it goes without saying that we need to do all these things in some sense to increase human capability, to foster productivity and growth. So there has to be something about quality of our learning. But I say life is what happens to us while we are making other plans. And we can think about all these interventions, all these other things. But it's not that the education sector in India and how it connects to the economy is a static one which is not changing over time. And in my talk today, I'll talk about various lenses to look at the dynamics of what's happening in the Indian education sector, the way it links up to the economy. I'll try to be general, but I'm also aware that there is a section of this audience for young scholars. So I will also throw out some technical challenges in some of these issues. I think those are all open for further research. So do pardon me, some of you, if you see some regression tables once in a while here and there. I will explain them in words. They are not supposed to be very technical. But it's important for young scholars to realize the kind of challenges of communication, answering some of them. Of course, this talk is about India, so I will talk more about India. And then for those who are interested in this larger kind of story of what is happening, I will try to throw some of these results in a broader economic theory of structural transformation and what are the processes that we are seeing in a country like India. So these are old lenses. These are lenses that we are used to think about education as a dimension of human capital for many, many years. Then, after having spent some time on that, I'll talk about things that look interesting to me. Since I'm a science law, I talk about scientific temperament. I talk about whether these can be taught in school. I talk about experiments that try to do so. Right? And then I talk about how do we deliver them. So issues which link up to different dimensions of human capital. So let's start off with the old thing. And people talking about how static and stagnant Indian education is, they really recognize the great progress that we have made, at least in sending people to universities and schools. Right? This is not a trivial one. This is actually, if you look at developing countries all over the world, you will realize that India is very special in that. That we have managed to, increase literacy rates from 72% to almost 33%, and this is old data, even lower now. And quite significantly, we've been able to raise our university completion rates from 1.1% in the 1970s to almost 11% uh, in 2018 and more recently that was in my license. So this is one of the big costs. Yeah, we can ask ourselves what are we teaching and so forth, but we have to be focused in bringing people to institutions. So the question is, all of us are a little apprehensive about what people are learning in universities and schools. So the first question I would like to ask, if you ask yourself, is that does this kind of human capital growth lead to economic development? So this comes with all kinds of its quality problems and conflicts. Why? Well, because whatever we try to do today, think that we are doing foundational learning today. The effects of this foundational learning will be felt probably 20 years from now. So thinking about long-term strategies, even if you think of the best of them, will yield evidence linking human capital to income at the macro level of country can be very weak. Now, this is a paradox because actually, if you look at the literature on the connection between individuals or earnings or human capital and their income, it's more satisfying in the sense that we get for every year of education to what we are learning. This is at a macro level. The results are significantly weak, and to just do that, I'm going to show you a table where you don't need to read anything. What you need to look at is this red bar and look at those numbers, and you see a bunch of negatives, and you will see absence of stars, which signifies statistical significance. This is a very seminal paper by a famous education economist called Matt Fitch, who basically in a very provocative paper say, where is all the education gone? Took a sample, a large sample of countries, and looked across them. And they have different levels of education, completion, and found that there is almost, even if you kind of control for lots of other things that are different across the countries, at the macro level, there seems to be any connection between levels of completion of education levels and growth. And then someone said, well, it could be that these levels don't really come with quality, right? People are just going through these hopes. And said, okay, let us now look at the connection between test scores that many countries select and grow. And it's the same thing. You will see some numbers, but you won't see any statistical significance. Right? So there doesn't seem to be a very robust connection between these macro indicators of human capital and growth and development. So this is on the large literature in trying to ask, why are we seeing this? Is this actually true? If it is true, then we have been advocating education for improving the economy for a long time. Yeah, doing so. Or are we thinking the challenges that we need to face if you ask some questions like that? Now, some of these technical challenges are actually very trivial to understand. In fact, they're fairly general for us to understand, right? The estimates that we just saw are cross-country comparison. So you're comparing the US to Serbia, to India, to Australia, and so on and so forth. Yes, you have a lot of controls in the statistical sense, but countries are too different. They are too different in their institutions, too different in the way they work. So maybe these kind of cross-country comparisons are not valid. So
why you see no connection is because you're comparing apples to oranges or mangoes to lychees, as I say nowadays. Um, there is another way, another correction you could do in thinking about these kind of problems. You could say, well, let's not compare across countries. Let's compare a country to itself over time. Because the education will go up or go down in some countries of the world. And maybe that causes fluctuations in growth rates. And that's where we will kind of learn whether education matters or not. This is got to do with something I taught some of you in the workshop with the idea of consumer regression. But these are often very bad to actually estimate impacts of very slow moving things. Education levels talk of educated people in India is not going to go up in a big way year on year or even 5 years. Right? It takes a long time to see substantial changes in education completion in a society to be able to to get enough variation over time for a country to be able to estimate this relationship. Right? And so, at the end of this, these kind of exercises also not yield amazing results. And so the verdict from the literature over 15 years of literature on this is that we are, we still need to compare across space, but we cannot compare countries. We need to compare within much smaller spaces, right? And one of these smaller spaces, these are things like we compare across states, but even states have different policies. We can compare across districts, look at their completion rates, their growth rates. We could even go down to blocks. We could go down even to villages, right? And this is a literature that is called the macro micro literature. It is not about individuals, it's still about societies, right? About economies. The village is an economy in itself. And so you're doing kind of macro kind of work, but of course the level is not a country, but the level is a much more segregated. So what are the challenges? And I like to say this because often when social scientists present, our talk seems to be much more general. Whenever I've gone, my uncle used to be a scientist. Whenever I sat, they would always present very technical stuff, and I used to always say that why do social scientists only have to talk about general things? So I'm going to talk about something slightly technical, but actually it's so easy to understand that you can almost say it's a general thing, right? Which is that does education cause income increases or does income cause high education? You can say that people like to get educated when they get richer, they want to send their children to universities, countries invest a lot more in higher education once they go richer. You could think about the process working in the opposite way. Right? So you become rich and then you invest in education. It would give you very similar rates of, similar correlations over time. So that's one problem that all research which tries to look at these relationships have to deal with. The second relationship is education in a society is highly linked. There's lots and lots of things which we call institutions. This word institutions is like a catch-all for a lot of things that we know are different, like practices, law and order, savings behavior, generally educated societies are put right? And it's very difficult to figure out. Society is doing. How do you know it's the not the fact that we talk about some research on India that kind of establishes some things before we think. Notice that, and this is important, that one of the disadvantages of being in the global south is that when we present research, we are kind of thought to be like, okay, developed countries have the money, they have the education, research is on them. It's a kind of an exotic thing to look at some developing countries. The term development economics itself, that I point out many times, is a treatment of that where studying the whole country or a whole part of the world is put into one field. So, but this kind of literature actually tells you that in fact you should be looking at individual countries because two broad comparisons give you results which don't make sense.
So India is not just because you like and you live in India, it's also a strategy to be able to understand the situation. So what do we know about the connection between education and growth and various levels of disaggregation in a country like India? Right? So I put this regression table because I wanted to show you some other results, setting a very start. So these estimates stand for the share of population that have completed and only completed that level only, and nothing higher. So S of prime is the share of the young labor force that have only primary education, and nothing about that, right? The S is the share of population which has just matriculation, nothing about that. And S is tertiary education, is the share of population that has university education completely. Notice that the only one which has some AB written on it, writing stars again, the only significant correlate of growth in states of India across time, in fact, this is a final regression, is higher education. That doesn't mean, of course, that school education doesn't matter. You don't get people completing universities that haven't gone to primary school. But it tells you that for getting, if you have an economics lens and you want to think about education, it's only when you can get people all the way up to university, that's where you get dividends from education, right? And in fact, if in a society, if you have a one, in the Indian society, if you have a 1% change in graduate completion, among matriculants, then has the same effect as a 13% decrease in illiteracy. So why do I point out this thing? Because one thing you can do education policy is you can have mass education and then you hope that some people will reach different levels of education, right? But there are other policies you can think of in the short run where you take matriculants and try to increase conversion rates to universities. And that could give you a lot more. Of course, 1% change in graduate education is a harder thing because the base is very small. You're looking here, as I said, in 2001, the 5% of Indian adults actually have university education. So 1% change is a very big change to think of in that sense. But there is a margin on which some things can be done. Right? And if you look at the last column, it tells you about a conversion rate. So the last column, just to interpret that, this is the proportion of people who are at least higher secondary, who then go on to complete graduation. This is about 50%. Quickly over the last few years, we are losing half our children from higher secondary to university. Now, if you can do something about it, there will be a short-term effect. You can try to change short-term things. So when we think about these lenses, yes, foundational learning is important. Yes, it's important to start from very low down. But a policy which kind of gets people into school and then forgets about them, leading to a large proportion of people with some level of schooling, is not very useful from an economics lens. No, I'm using the word economic lens because you can say that education is a thing that you desire by itself, and I don't think one can deny that. Educated individuals make up better societies. But if you think of investment in education, you have to think of the economist. You have to think of the sensible return from it. Further, if you drill down to where this connection between between this level of university completion is with the economy, it's not in the primary sector. It's not in the manufacturing sector. It's only in the services sector. So the theory is that university completion has a connection with growth, but it's largely to the services sector. This is actually not true for most countries in the world. China showed about 30 years of growth just by focusing on middle schooling because they have a very strong manufacturing driven story. So depending on what kind of economy you have, different levels of education will have a role. Okay, so as a state, maybe states are very different. Maybe states are, too broad to compare. They have different state policies. Why don't we drill down further? Right? Why don't we drill down to districts of India? And this particular graph basically shows you the dispersion of university education across different districts of India. Okay. You can see there is a fair degree of variation even within a particular state. Of course, once you drill down to districts, it gets harder to measure things like development. Right? States, because of budgets, declare SDGs, you have good measures of what progress means, or economic progress means. So one of the things I urge many students to do is to think out of the box. And so about 14 years back, researchers in the US realized by looking at data all over the world that nightlife has a very, very strong correlation to economic growth. Now, is nightlife, nightlife growth? Of course not. It's a proxy. Right? It is a very strong link. And so the advantage is once you think about nightlife as your measure of development, you're free of the statistical system. Now you look at satellites. Okay. So a lot of research now in economics is using satellite data. And once you have satellite data, it's all you have to do is you observe things from space, you observe nightlife, you observe crop productivity, you observe infrastructure, and then to kind of construct district level numbers is just about you basically dipping into the boundaries to say, well, in this part of this district, this is the nightlife. And so you can see the figure on the right basically is just converting this image into an average nightlife luminosity for each district of India. So, if you are asking a harder question, you have to be more innovative. You cannot come back and say, well, we don't have data. And you can do actually even better than this, as you can see in the picture. If you move down to districts, this correlation is equally strong. So this is a population about 25 with tertiary education on the x-axis and the luminosity per square kilometer on the y-axis. And you see that there's a very positive kind of shape. This is of course confirmed by statistical testing. Statistical test. Even before that, you can see there's a strong positive correlation between the two. But you have to deal with the fact that those 2 points we talked about, which causes what do we do about institutions? One good thing about looking at districts of India is that if you look at intra-state comparisons, which is districts within a state, we have the same state policies. So at least you are not picking up impact of state policy differences across different states. You're looking at different districts within the same state. So many things are the same. Other, which makes comparisons tighter, which makes you give more quote-unquote quality results. So, we have been talking in the workshop, the name of the game, you can think of it like an experiment, is to generate what is called exogenous variation in higher education. Like changes in higher education, that is not because of income, not because of institutions, but it just happens that there are differences across different districts. And then you ask, well, if there is some variation in that, there are differences in that, does it cause higher levels of development? So that's the kind of nature of experiment you are thinking. You cannot use the differences that are there in the data across different education levels across districts because, of course, they also react to income, they also react to other institutions. So this is where the role that a lot of us economists play in experimental work is to think about natural experiments that yield the transfer. So here's one just for fun sake. This is a map of the Catholic missions in 1911. This is actually from the Vatican, this map. And you can see that there are some parts that are marked in red and marked. So this is where Catholics kind of settle down by the end of the beginning of the 20th century. And as I pointed out in our workshop too, a lot of Catholic missions in India are Jesuits. Jesuits have a very, very strong preference for higher education. But Jesuits, the history of Jesuits say that they have very little role to play in almost any other institution of India. They don't take agricultural practices. They have relatively less to do with how you trade. This is not a big population and a large population of India. So in an experiment like this, of course, there are many more details. One can think about, well, is it the case that when Catholic missions basically organized and set up shop by the early 20th century, these places now that you see higher levels of education? Right? That's true. That's amazingly true. And actually, that's true for Protestants too. Places with Protestants that have show on average higher literacy rates. We always focus on lower levels of education. Okay? So the point here is not to explain what determines higher education, but to think about experiments which give you variation. It is not linked to income. Of course, you have to establish that Catholic missionaries did not set up in rich places, they set up in good places, which would have been anyways progress over time. So that's the part of the experiment, that's the part of, of arguing these cases. So, a lot of students, I would encourage you to learn a lot of GIS methods. You can convert a lot of old stuff, old maps, a lot of stuff that geographers do into data that economists study. This is the same easy map that's the whole current boundary. You can figure where they are. Submit it. And just to give you an idea of what an experiment means, at the end of it, if you do it, the results that you get from the state level typically go down again at the district level. The only level of education completion that matters for economic development, proxy for nightlife, is higher education. Primary education completion, other things don't have any correlations. Again, this is not to say primary education is not important. You don't get university completion, you still have to go through primary. It is to say that the policy of just getting children to school and then forgetting about them is not going to get you any economic growth. It's not going to get you economic development. They will just complete a level and just drop out. And that is not going to give you anything that you can use. Okay. Very similar to state level results. The only thing that seems to matter, why it has this connection to growth, is the tertiary. This is again just like the services sector. So it's again the service sector, kind of higher education, service sector, growth kind of link that comes up in here. So now many of you may kind of think that, oh, here's the confirmation. You're in Hyderabad, right? You see all these, all these universities, these schools, your IT parks. Everyone is thinking, okay, so this is the full service sector. We are providing financial services, we are providing IT services. This is the story of India that we always want to tell. What sort of activities do people do? University educated people do in terms of these what we call services. Right? So yeah, if you look at the scale of what tertiary educated 25 and above do, yes, it's services. You can see that 48% of people who are university educated are in the services sector. So that's surprising. But what is services sector? I call it the great Indian education multiplier. A large proportion of people is university educated people in India. Higher education. It's of course disproportionately large for females, but it's not small for males either. Okay. Now, those who have done, the rest year, we have done many village studies, we know that getting a Sarkari Naukri in school is a big thing. It's not a small job, it's a lucrative job. No, I think what we need to ask ourselves is that yes, we have this great connection. Yes, we have all the citizens that our public schools are not working, teachers are not doing anything. We need to investigate this further because if this is the source of growth, then what is it about education? What is it about teachers? And leading us? No, I am also aware of a very perverse relationship which asks us to question the concept of GDP itself. If you measure GDP from the income side, and a big proportion of them are public servants like teachers, and their wages are determined by the government, then those wages have nothing to do with their productivity. So you might be getting a higher GDP because of large portions of people in education, but that's just an accounting thing. And because they get higher wages, so it shows up in GDP, and so GDP goes up. But I'm a little more, I'm less pessimistic. I do think teachers have a very important role to play. I will talk about it quickly later. But it is true that this is a link that people don't talk about enough. They only thinking about IT parks and financial investment when they're thinking about the educated in India. So The second thing I want to quickly talk about in the whole lens is this idea that we have a link of higher education to the service sector, to the growth in society. This is a structural transformation kind. It's consistent with the structural transformation story, right? And people have calculated over the years that higher educated people get educated, they move from the primary sector, typically agriculture, to the secondary, and then to the tertiary. Maybe we skip manufacturing, but we are moving in that direction. Um, and typically, this such movement comes with movement of labor from rural to urban area. This is a classical kind of lowest kind of idea. There are many different grand models of thought and think about the process of urbanization with education and with the sectoral change. So if this is true, then you should see what you generally see, that you see a rise in human capital, you see an increasing of service sector, you see a rising urbanization, and this is basically what leads to growth and development. However, please contend with the fact that according to the population census of 2011, approximately one-third of the tertiary educated actually reside in rural areas. And if I can show you, this is the proportion of the first two graphs are the proportion of the population living in rural areas that are university educated, and you can see that there has been a rise from about 1.68% in 1991 to about 6% in 2018. But the overall stock is, of course, includes a lot of older people, and you cannot change their education level. So let's look at the younger people, 25 to 34 years old, right? And you see this number has gone up from 0.67 to 12.28, right? These are rural residents. So what is remained, kind of unsaid in the story of higher education and this idea in our head of structural transformation is that we have a huge proportion of people with university education even in rural areas, right? So what are they doing, right? And so you can ask this question: do they have a role to play in rural prosperity? This is important, and I will talk about it very quickly at the end. This leads to a very different way societies will grow. And if indeed tertiary education has a role in rural prosperity, then what is it driven by? Is it driven by education? Is it driven by jobs inside, outside? Is it driven by agriculture? Is it driven by private jobs? All these things are important for us to think about in this particular way. Right? You can even do better if you are doing work at the village level. In fact, you can now move down to sub-district. In fact, my paper with Ravindra, we moved down to the village. And we asked whether the village prosperity has anything to do with the share of population who is university educated living in a village. Okay? And forget everything about this table except the fact that you see that numbers like 0.05, 0.04, these basically tell you that there's almost a 4 to 5% increase in the consumption in village. So 5% increase in consumption, average consumption in villages with a higher proportion of university educated. Right? This is already addressing many of the problems that we have talked about. And so these are causal estimates. So the importance is that where is this coming from? Right? Is it coming from just these universities, these education jobs of school teachers in villages? Actually, it increases the probability of regular jobs, but not in the public sector. In fact, private sector jobs. People think we do private sector jobs in villages, honestly, for university education. And that is not the surprising part. The surprising part, and I think the hope, for India moving forward is having higher educated persons in a household causes agriculture output per unit of cultivated land to rise. In fact, here, agriculture is now the second most reported occupation for tertiary educated people. Right? Now, I know university educated people do not want to do farming. I'm not in any, illusion that they want to be an agriculturist. However, you can think about many of the problems that urban India is facing. In terms of it's very difficult to migrate, there are not enough jobs for university educated persons, If we are Uber drive, university people being Uber drivers, there is a margin here where you can get growth in the rural sector because university educated people now will live there. So where do we get this from? We find when further investigation that having such members means that you have access to technology. You have information about technology. You have information about prices. Right? These houses are more likely to move into more mechanization. They have higher crop diversity. So where is this coming from? Well, you have an educated person in a household. Whether the person himself or herself is interested or not, you know that you say, Papa, look at this mobile phone में आपको दिखा देते हैं यहाँ पे क्या चल रहा है, right? या agriculture institute है, you can get seeds from here. So there is an impact that you can get from here, and you can even get it from people being skilled agriculturalists themselves. So we call it the second wave in some sense. That whether it is it's not just house reported, even if you measure from space, you can measure visually and you can try to figure out whether that's agriculture productivity or not. It shows exactly the same result. So it's not some reporting of agriculture profits. It's actually you can even see it from space. That areas where you have this highly educated people see, which leads to larger net, what is called net primary product. So the structural transformation story that we have come up with, right? More education, people will move out of villages, go to urban cities will get congested. So this is happening. But another thing is happening, which is that it's a different kind of structural transformation. It doesn't rely on long-term migration. Is generated from within rural economy, right? And actually, some people, including some Nobel Prize winners, have pointed out that we cannot forget the role of agriculture. Agriculture, we cannot disable agriculture. Agriculture will still have an important role to play, but we have been struggling on how to get productivity increases. Maybe this is one way that we can. Evidence shows that it's already happening. Yeah? And maybe we need to bolster these processes. Okay, so that's my whole lens to the problem. You can see that I'm really fast. You can position it in a different key and come up with your own narrative. It's something that is so these facts. And whatever you have to address these facts. So what is new lenses? And so the new lenses are so consistent all these things. We have talked about education levels, test scores, learning assessments. These are your proxies for human capital, right? Now, as an educationist, I've always known that these are imperfect. I don't really care so much about kids. But they've been popular because there is an idea that these are very good predictors of economic. So, people are proxies for cognitive learning, sometimes ability. And they found that these matter for earnings. And so, from here, there is this overall idea that all economic policy has to be, or education policy that is linked to economic practice, has to be about exams, assessments, and cognitive learning as being the pillar of what we want from our so the formal education boards do that. You can see that the way we measure learning assessments are. But in a very interesting experiment that was done by groups, there are two groups, basically they put them in the which indicated that the other group were around 2 people from one class. That in the group where there are 2 people, there was no So ask yourself, what is if we are going to base education policy and assessment? We have to recognize that assessments are not just cognitive. Very policy developed by Hexman in a seminal piece. And basically he says that we are stressing about just increasing people's assessment scores. But actually assessment scores are not as kind of standard maybe they will address. And even a very spectacular is a very, very interesting thing. In the US, when you feel at the end of the GED, the scores you get, they have exact same learning, right? But the outcome of Jubilee high secondary passed it first time. The last one is difficult. who failed, but then did the GED, got equivalent scores, and then they started. The thing to notice is that the outcomes are wildly different, and the outcomes are, you control for ability, you control for, understanding traits and stuff like that. You can see that this animal learning, I can show it to you for almost all life outcomes. So cognitively, they are no different. But there is something different about people who have failed, right? That seems to, in fact, have a strong predictive power on many other things that matter to economists and not just economists, but sociologists, people who work with crime, all these other things. So the his point was why we focus only on this education aspect as if that's the holy grail and nothing else matters. Right? And so with this understanding in the last 10 years, there has been an explosion in what you mean by human care. There is a recognition now that we need to all just to be skill to learn assessment and all. For economic to get economic success, you need reasoning, logical reasoning, curiosity, self-regulation. And you need a bunch of non-cognitive skills too, which we thought was outside the ambit of economic research, but which can all this work on. Sociability, grit, confidence, being interesting, aspects of personality, things like that. Okay? And now, so these matter, and these people have been tracking for now some years in developed countries. You can see that the only thing you need to notice here is the top kind of line, which represents the amount of jobs that people do in high social skill, high math activity. These are the skills, these are the jobs that are going up in the developed world, developing society. You can see the one that is at the bottom is are jobs which are low social, low math. That doesn't work. But if you try to compensate, when you look at the red line, these are high social, low math, you'll see that's also doing quite well. And if you look at earnings, in fact, in the developed world, the earnings are basically accruing to people who have the knowledge of math, but actually sociability, being able to work in teams is equally important. It's not, in fact, you can see that the blue line in some sense, the red line is almost higher than the blue line in many years. So you can say that, these are stories of the US and maybe they don't matter. But in fact, there is now lots of evidence that these are beginning to matter and matter for developing countries as well. Right? So one of the things I always wonder about, these are the returns, the earnings that you get at different levels of education in India. And you can see it's complex, right? At the top, it goes up by a lot. Ask yourself the following question. Leading aside people from some elite institutions like University of Hyderabad and ISI and IIT and IIM who have never filled up a single survey form that I know of. And very few people from these places who ever filled the NSS survey form. What is being taught in universities that gives rise to such huge returns? What are these? Okay, maybe it's sorting. The evidence of sorting very high. No, not really. If you think about it, there are many students in India who are very, very smart, but they are not able to go to university because they don't have the money. Right? If anything, sorting is probably very, very imperfect in the Indian market, but we don't know as much. International evidence is, while we like to believe that there is sorting, this sorting is only for a very handful of institutions, most of whom don't count in most surveys. Harvard graduate is never part of a US survey. The evidence on cognitive learning is also very big. I don't know what, we are all complaining universities are not teaching that much, what's not useful for the market. What is the market paying for? Right? And if you think of it like that, and now I'm being provocative, I don't know. There's some evidence that education institutions are actually places that people are building themselves. Right? They are facing the world, giving independent choice. They're getting influenced by peers on non-cognitive traits. And there is evidence, in fact, from Delhi University, so that this is true. How big it is, what lingering impact it will have is an open question. The World Development Report, in fact, points out that technology is making some of the standard skills useless. So, in fact, you will need those skills that I mentioned. If they are not important today, they will be important in the next 5 years. There's no way you can get away. So, bottom line is that these are different kinds of skills which are important, and the new education policy also recognizes that. Question is, so these skills, do we get traits? Interesting. Some people are interesting. right? How maybe you telling someone who's not interesting, very interesting for job. You may not be easy, right? But actually, there is no evidence that these can be changed when you're young. Yeah. Does it really too late for college students? I don't know. We don't have any evidence. We don't know. There's no research on this. We have limited evidence on whether we can change some, whether we can make it change at this stage. But for sure, we know that when you are young, this is possible. One way to do this is through better. And a lot of research economists who work with educationists, and science I saw an education board here, that we are working with educationists to figure out how to give teams of pedagogy at scale to make students more inquisitive, more curious. Of course, there is this controversial sort of thing that you have to finish the British syllabus. I think parents often think that there is a trade-off between, like very different innovative kind of thinking and exam scores. Because they often say, ये तो project project कराते हैं ना, score कम हो जाता है. We want the children to do well in boards. Right? It's an important implication because in public schools, if people are not going to do well, they will suffer even more. So I will show you some evidence. First, let's talk about Turkey, then Uganda, and then some recent evidence from India. That's the last thing I'll talk about. In a recent paper in the American Economic Review, in poor schools of Turkey, people found that you can train students to become inquisitive. And science is a great tool for that. Right? Children are naturally drawn towards scientific topics. But also the nature of, not just the topics, the nature of inquiry is a questioning inquiry. And that has spillovers on many others. In Uganda, which by the way is very close to India and Human Development Index, so we are not too far from Uganda. The teachers are taught how to learn. So not what you need to learn, but how to learn. Right? This is then kind of teach the students. And these are randomized controlled trials, which is found that in fact, not only does it increase people's learning, but it increases people's test scores. Right? This is what a lot of people, the poor care about. Right? One of the things that we want to do this thing, I call it Bharat because, I want to talk about part of India, which is not your elite schools and elite, private schools and so on and so forth. I don't need this, but all of you know that it's in very bad shape. Lots of people are in school, but as I said, education level is not very high. Teachers are nothing, right? So do you give this kind of changes, this kind of pedagogy learnings in these kind of schools? Can you retrain teachers? The evidence for teacher training is very clear. So we have retrain teachers. Teachers will just say, no, नौकरी मिलता है. मेरा assessment होगा कि I can produce board results. I don't care if they are inquisitive or not. But we observe sometimes that one of the things that the education system is dealing with, and that is true for university level, is that students are getting increasingly disengaged from the reading. Yes. This is even more so in public schools, where teachers are boring. They may be teaching right stuff, but they are boring, right? Or the pedagogy is boring, and many of them just get disengaged. In fact, the national sample survey asked people why they don't go to school, and the second most important reason was children are not interested. And many people thought as an excuse that we are nothing like it. Not interested because they didn't want to answer. But if you take that seriously, then maybe we can do something about that aspect. So how do you do this at scale? Because one of the things to understand modern states work. Nowadays states don't implement. Nowadays NGOs work with states to implement. And I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. There are people who are specialized in doing something and some activities that don't require very, very sustained effort. This cannot be a bad idea. So let me give an example. I call it the Carl Sagan example. When I was in high school, we used to get 1 hour of program on Sunday called Cosmos. Right? It was only 1 hour. He was not coming to my class every day to tell me teach me science. But to stimulate my interest in science, to want me to learn and to engage with what is happening to class, it was very important that he raised my level of inquisitiveness Nothing to do so. So I'm not a scientist. But I gain from it. So it obviously spurs, spills over to other aspects of my pedagogy and my learning. Right? So can we create our sentence in schools in India? And so we work with a with a you know in a with a NGO foundation that is actually trying to specialize in this. And this is not one small NGO. These are now big foundations that are working in many states of India. Right? And so I'll just give you an example and then I will my talk. So there is a section on light. Typically, teacher will go to the blackboard and draw out angle of incidence, angle of reflection, something like that, refraction. And the students will be just throwing chalk at each other, looking at each other, what is going on and stuff, right? So what does this pedagogy kind of idea do? It's a third party that is synchronized with the syllabus. Before starting of any topic, once every month, it basically goes and does experiments. Right? And how does it do experiments? It goes in a mobile kind of it takes basically takes some of these mobile vans, takes nice experiments. And this is where scientists actually have to play a very important role. How to construct these interesting experiments to get the interest of children. Right? And so, quickly I will not go through the whole thing. For me as a child growing up, one of the most amazing things was to burn paper through a magnifying glass. It was the science at work. Right? You can make a drastic thing to a small thing. And if you engage children in these experiments, it's possible that they connect to the sessions that go on at night. Right? So we did this randomized controlled trial exactly for that. And what do we see? This is UP. This is public school. So we're not talking here about some high-five private school of Delhi or Hyderabad. We do find that this is able to increase scientific curiosity of children. Now, how do we measure this? We work with psychology. So this is another thing. So you can see the fields are all now getting, it's interdisciplinary. Educationists, economists, evaluators, psychologists, all coming together. So we try to measure increased scientific curiosity, increases curiosity in general, increases creativity, which we measure through task, confidence, increases education aspirations, and if you don't care about all that, you increases force. This is science, then some other subjects. You can make it to something like that. Right? So maybe this is the way we should do. In fact, the Andhra government is also trying out something called the ELDB, which we are evaluating with 33,000 kids all over Andhra Pradesh. Again, to make children think out of the box. This is not to be at the cost of what is going on. What is going on will keep going on. It will change in its own secular, small way. It is to create a system with NGOs, with foundations outside to prop up this kind of thinking, which we think is going to complement what is done. So when you come here, you will already be interesting. You will not have to learn to be interesting in college. So in conclusion, I would say that it's important to take note of this aspect of human capital also, which is becoming increasingly important in the world, but not to accept in a state, because a lot of people do when you talk to someone and say he's impatient. So that's something impatient. Right? It's okay. People are reading about it. Risk-taking. It's a risk-taking person. I don't think even children understand what it means to be risk-taking. Risk-taking is not to take risks. It's to deal, in some sense, to reduce the risk factor of risky things. That's what the entrepreneur does. Okay? So the country can invest in this as we have seen through many other interventions. Now, how much this will go? What is the return from this? We have some estimates, but this is to many of you young researchers to tell us that we can do it. So, to take this on, we need to be able to reach from our education institutions. Of course, we have to do something about the cognitive skills. What we are saying is something is already going on. It's not like education is useless, but we have to prop it up. But we have to bolster it with higher skills and non-cognitive skills. It is possible. These are not like in the air kind of statements. The good news is, unlike private schools, where everyone complains that project-based work, experiential learning work is in conflict with their children's SAT scores to go abroad or to apply for IIT. At the level of most students in India, that in public schools, there is no conflict. right? Already it's very low. The only way you can do is to drag them mentally back to the class in some way. So that while we work on teaching practices and so on and so forth, the children is able to attach themselves back to the content. And this can only come through simulating things like curiosity, way of asking, questioning, things like that. Right? So there is no conflict. In fact, it may bolster these whole sorts of studies. Thank you. To make this session more interesting. It's what actually the data was fascinating. And I was looking at what still to it. I'm not an economist. You were showing two important things. One, that even though in a system where education per se and higher education in particular has failed, higher education does pay dividends. It's like an inversion economy at a larger level. The failed system, higher education, and using a strong word to make a case, is still paying a dividend. Therefore, we should go for higher gross enrollment ratio because that's one tool that is available to us. Maybe it is paying dividends even in villages. That's what you show. I think this is fascinating. And I think the emotion happens because we are talking about India. We are fifth largest economy, very large economy, and bulk of this economy comes from low income people. People who earn 25,000 per month make about 40, 50, 60% of GDP. It's in the back. And any failed education also will give you 25,000, 30,000 per month. So this is reconciling the gap side. Our main job is to generate high income jobs. And India has always been an anomaly. Fifth largest economy doesn't give high income jobs. Even when we become third largest economy, I'm doubtful whether we will generate high income enough jobs. So we are moving, but we are failing. This is a real anomaly. So the real question is, how do we generate high income jobs to individuals? If we want to become a developed nation, our per capita GDP has to go at least tenfold. We have maybe $2,000 per year per person now. Thereabouts. We should become $20,000. It's a long jump we have to make. So at a base level, we are happy. At a base level, higher education is paying. But that base level is a base level. In fact, this is the real dark side. In the country with about maybe 800, 900 districts, only about 100 districts contribute to the best part of GDP. The remaining 600, 700 districts, some of them do not even contribute as much as Sudan districts. Districts in Sudan contribute. That dark belly is very high. So we are uneven happening country, and I think this data does fit with that. We have a long way to go. I'm talking about general citizen, but I think my numbers are accurate enough in the economics model. So therefore, gross enrollment ratio has to happen, increase. Otherwise, we will stuck. So there is a window of opportunity that if we do national education policy properly, gross enrollment ratio from about current 22, 23%, 25, it should go to at least 50%. Then there is a possibility that high income jobs will start happening
provided we become innovative. Before I came here, I was working with Agastya. And the purpose of Agastya is to create innovation, out-of-box innovation. Because classrooms in the schools, classrooms in the colleges, classrooms in the universities have become extremely boring for various reasons. So we have to have a different model where students ask out-of-box questions, sort of not so relevant questions sometimes, and then maybe that will trigger some level of deep learning, deep passion, curiosity that you are using that word. It actually awaken innovation, which will create high-paying jobs. Right now we are doing service jobs, only service jobs. We are not creating enough things. We are not creating good books. We don't write good books. We don't create good educational tools that others can follow. We are simply following what is there available. Very flat-forward. So if we start doing that, even in Infosys, in Tata Consultancy Services, we have only services. Now technology has been created in India. Now it is happening. But in the past, simply for the middle districts, innovation has not happened. Now it's happening. And that's a solid story of India. Excellence is there, but only 1%, 2%. I'll give best example. IITs, NITs in the country, if we take them as excellent engineering training institutions, annually they do not produce more than 40,000 students per year. All NITs, all IITs, all UOH, everybody put together. About 40,000 or so. How many engineering graduates India produces per year? About 40 lakhs. In the 40 lakhs of portion, 40,000 is excellence. It's single digit. And this is so in every walk of life. You miserably failed in scaling up the excellence. We have almost not used women power in most of our productive. Women power is just coming up now. 50% of human population in India has never been used properly. Unless you use the 50% very powerfully, very effectively, we will not get there. No one will work. It will be very interesting to see actually educated females in villages, semi-urban and urban cities. If you look at their data, how do they contribute? That's an unsung story. My feeling is the moment we start unleashing women power in productive Indian activities, I think we will start seeing high-paying jobs. I don't think they have done that. So I think India is a very mixed bag country. Excellence is there, but in patches. And there is no uniformity at all. And there are patches at multiple locations in the country. We must develop this evenly, bring about methods where we evenly promote high-paying jobs. We will remain a work in progress. This is my idea. And I think all of us have responsibility for that. And also, we don't have too much time. Can you remember? Our demographic dividend is a sweet spot. If we miss this opportunity, we may become an aging population
with no productivity. Think of the situation. At least Western countries who are aging have already developed their affluence. They have resources. They can hire manpower from India to get their things done. We should reach a situation within maybe 10 years where we generate high-paying jobs, increase our resources, so that when our country becomes aged, we have a breathing room. Otherwise, it will be very, very disastrous, in my opinion. So I think I'm just putting the context in relation to what you have presented. I think your data is just fascinating, and I can reconcile with that using Indian GDP as a benchmark. It's not a very happy scenario in the real sense because our GDP already, but it's not even enough at all. So thank you very much. I really enjoyed and learned a lot. We need to promote Agastya type of model. We need a lot more of that. I think young scholars sitting here should go to the government and set up some of these projects. These are not expensive projects at all. These are no money projects. Using technology to stimulate thinking in the students. It's possible to do it with very, very low resources. And those resources we can generate by CSRs. If we generate some of these interesting pedagogic stimulating models, I think the rural system will make up. We don't need to send them to IIT, all of them. IIT is not a model for us to follow. It's a small model. 98% of all India is not in IIT. I think we need to come up with our own models, which I hope our young scholars will contribute to. Thank you very much. I think I spoke a little too much, but I think some questions can be, some tough questions have to be asked now. You know, it's a long, maybe 10-15 minutes. Then please open up with some questions to our esteemed speaker, especially from students. Yes, we are all students. We are all students, absolutely right. We are all students, young students, not so young students. Am I shout? I can shout. Thank you, sir. I'm second year student. Going through your first lens and second lens, my thought process is going like this. I am saying, and then I can frame it as a question. When seeing your first lens, I was thinking like, okay, you said higher education gives more dividends, so we have to focus on higher education. But we need to have more space, right? More space to add more people into higher education. So I was thinking like we have to put more interest towards primary education because it will create more curiosity and more people who are curious enough to go towards higher education. Then you have more enough space so that even if you take smaller portion of people to tertiary education, then we have very good. But your second lens cleared that part for me. But every sorry, curiosity and test force trade off. So I was thinking again back like if you create more higher education institutes which are so called excellence, then this trade off can decrease so that we can focus more on creative curiosity. So there is some kind of balance we have to create between focusing towards primary and higher because so what kind of balance we should. That is one thing, and I have second question. First thing first. It's a great question. I just want to point out that there is, in fact, I said there is no trade-off. That's important. If there wasn't freedom of then we would have to do all these discussions about this course will go down if you do curiosity. So, many people misinterpret my results that I presented to begin with, saying that my results are saying that we should focus only on higher education. Just focusing on higher education completion. Okay. How do you get higher education completion? It can come in many ways. Right? I talked about one way you could do it, and that one way I pointed out was because even if you were to raise curiosity of children in primary school, the impact of that on higher education will be 15 years from now. Right? As pointed out, it may be too late then. Right? So only in the spirit of that, I talked about whether, well, look, there is a margin here of higher secondary students, can we do something about that? But you are completely correct that ultimate solutions have to come from a more robust primary education system. My submission is that primary education, pushing people into school to just increase enrollment ratios is not the solution to the problem. This has been actually the policy for the last 30 years. Right? It has also some policy benefits. I remember most of us know John Dress telling us that you're talking about education returns, but look at these people when they start. When earlier they could not sign a debt contract. Today they could sign their name and ask you what are the terms. Right? There is something about empowerment that comes to education. It's definitely true. But if you are looking for a funded education system, you also need to generate some output. Right? That's how the economic lens is important. Right? But if you invest in primary education, sure, you should. But evidence so far has been barring some of these very innovative procedures. We have not thought of it like that. I think the education policy does think. But to be honest, when I go outside these education spaces, even these education spaces, people are often putting out some newfound ideas that education system had that, oh, we should do experiential learning, we should do theory-based learning. Yes, a new fads in education. But what people are not realizing is the crisis that education is in. And these innovative solutions are the only solutions that may actually revive the system. Right? And I would also like to react to that, this point that all the work that we've shown in these slides have been an incremental returns. There has not been, so we said we get you more. There has never been a contention that this is getting you the perfect. That we are going to become a $1 trillion economy just by doing, what we are doing right now. Definitely nurturing. But one of the things I want to tell you is that, as I mentioned, is that there is a lot of research mumbling if you talk to there are surveys on this. But I talk to Uber drivers a lot. So people I notice they tell me it's a particular road क्या है? Uber driver ही बनना है तो what we a lot of us is that because of these high returns, there has been all households, all parents. We have this immediate idea that economic prosperity is equal to more education, is equal to sending people through different levels of education. This is not something that is true for all parts of the world. And my suspicion is that if the returns are not, are not equally distributed, then very soon people will say, why go to university? Higher secondary में कहाँ पे लग जाता है? It's taking a long time to move away from people working and going out to actually wanting to come and study. So that's an aspect that we should not, and in fact, education policy or policies that are targeted to funding should not treat education as elite spaces, but as a critical requirement for getting any benefit out of education. Right? The other thing is that whether how to increase the levels, they will come from this propping up of primary schooling, making people curious, thinking about out of the box solutions and stuff. So that I would say is work in progress. Right? So the first part, the old lens part, is telling you that don't think of it like anything. That this is there are a bunch of people who are very privileged and they're going to universities and that's what it is. Yeah, and that is boosted by a lot of students saying that they're learning nothing from university, going something a lot of us hear this a lot. And you go back to policy makers also. University spaces are just sorting mechanism. Nothing happening here. There's no real impact on the economy. Some of them complaining there are no skills. So everyone's asking, what is happening in university? People just sorting themselves. You get to IIT, you show that you're a good student. That's all. There's nothing happening in any institution. But that's not true. Because everyone is pointing out that there is something happening. Right? So this is the important point that these institutions, higher education institutions, who also need to be bolstered. Is it going to be enough? I completely submit. Of course not. And we have to work on these out of the box solutions in the education, the schooling system, to make sure that not only we get, by the way, once that improves, it may well be that the returns to university education fall. Because then even a higher secondary educated person would have enough skills in a different way to be able to earn better learn. But the levels would go up in all at all levels. Levels would be higher for income. Right? But we are very far away from that. So we need two-pronged strategies. There's not just one prong where we say that, in the initial phase, we are focused a lot on higher education. And post 75, we are focused a lot on making education available to all. And that's it, because we have to do that. But I think sometimes we have kind of forgotten that it's also important that we just have a few IITs, but in fact, we try to meet higher education salient with more and more people. Right? And so that's an important thing that, I think that's my general point that I would like to make. Thanks. Thank you, sir. I'm sorry, it's not your results, but at least in the fairness mindset, there is the thread that is. On the second question, okay, I can ask you a second question outside.
You already said only students, but I have one question. Simple. In your experimental studies, you have mentioned that or maybe because the individual is essentially important tool by getting a score specifically, whereas other group did not face any kind of problem. When social identity or individual identity plays an important role in getting the scores, as well as in terms of the cognitive skills also, because Ashwini Deshpande studies proves that cognitive skills depends upon the social identity. How do you see that the level of the earnings depends only on the level of the education or the number of years of the schooling, basically? Because earnings are carried to the labor market also in terms of the social identity. Because there are various studies, even in the context of India, also in terms of the occupational discrimination because of the social identities and the gender identities, wage discrimination. So, what is the way forward you can look for? Because we see from the primary schools to the secondary and the higher educations, identity is seen. Social identity plays an important role. We cannot hide, especially in the Indian context. It has been the case with the gender also. And now we are talking about the alternative gender also. So, what is the way forward to have the better earnings, even with social identity?
So, it's, to be honest, one thing I could answer this for like this 1 hour, but I think that, I wanted to make a different point. So, the fact that there is discrimination in the labor market based on identity, gender identity, this is fairly well known. For many years, it's not just India, it's everywhere in the world. It's a universal phenomenon. But I'm actually pointing out to an even more subtle point if I can. I don't know if it's subtle, but the fact that these identities play through. So let's say that a firm does not discriminate. The firm just wants to hire people who have lots of marks. Right? 99% wale ko hire. I am pointing out that these identities are already affecting so even if you give the same input, the same teacher, the same school, the same library infrastructure, in which there is also discrimination. Let's say we are able to do that. That's easier. The government policy says everyone should have a school, everyone should have a library, everyone should have. Just spend money on that. What we are pointing out is that identity interacts with your own assessments in a way that even if the firm does not discriminate, and you're using only your assessment as a way of rewarding you, it will still feel something discriminating. Right? And so for that is that we have to realize that these identities, learning, these cognitive things which we take as So I think a lot of us, if we say there's no discrimination, but we only discriminate on cognitive ability. I think meritocracy is slightly, a lot of people think that's fine. Correct? Okay, we don't use any caste identity, we will not use gender identity, we will use your scores. My point is that even then, even in fact, you have this discrimination because some people take scores even with the same inputs, depending on who is evaluating. So these are much more subtle. And these are happening all the time in India. In fact, we should think about these are about other aspects of you, which are almost psychological, if you can say that, right? Which needs to be also addressed in public schools. It's not just a matter of that we are giving you the same input, so you should be doing the same output. If you don't, then you are lazy or your parental education is the only thing that matters. Yes, it matters, but it also matters on how you perceive yourself as a person, on your confidence, on what you think you can do, on how people are evaluating you. I think that we have not thought about it. Researchers have talked about it. Students have thought a lot about it. But I think that we, as a policy of how to address some of these issues, we are still a big believer in meritocracy. And we feel that as long as we can only evaluate by the grades, we are being completely fair. Even that is not fair. I think that was a very good lecture. Thank you for that. But my question is around say work of courts. Who compares what happened to wages and salaries of workers before 70s and after 70s. I was just thinking that your data set begins from 80s and then goes towards, I think, more current period. But suppose you pick on data between say 50s and 80s, would we have the same results? And the reason why I'm asking is because there the interpretation is that and which actually works down to the ground that there is an intensification of informalization. You need to go for your lecture one point, which is say, for instance, those who are recruited in the government. Are they really productive if they really take those incomes and believe that it may not hold? Same thing might hold true to a large number of these poor people who are migrants, who are recruited to informal employment, that their productivity levels could be high. Why their incomes are very poor, not because they are less skilled. Most of that is about job training and learning by doing, but because they are unorganized, because there is no civic voice. And the second question comes in the backdrop of the budget and its implications, which have gone down in the. So I was just wondering when Vice Chancellor said that as part of the NEP, we need greater enrollment. You know, large number of people and the per capita fund actually goes down, we might become like the government schools. So your government on board. Also, very, very, very good questions. The first thing is I showed you some graphs because if you wanted to stop. Actually, the state paper that shows the link between higher education and growth is using a data set from 1950s on. This is 2000 actually. This was written 10 years later. And the results are still true, but the time series is long. So it's not like we use only recent data. But what I found was interesting. One of the things we notice is that till the mid 1960s or 70s, we see that levels of education, like secondary, it did matter for even primary to some extent. But that's because we were an agrarian economy, right? So farmer knows how to read and write, you will get some productivity increase. And this has been well documented in work from Green Revolution and so on and so forth. But post 80s, you don't see this anymore. In fact, the interesting thing is when I did studying my graduation and coursework, we used to learn that returns to education are concave. The incremental returns, they are the highest when you move from illiteracy to primary education. And then as you move towards higher levels, the incremental amount that you get goes down. But that is only a phenomenon, not in India, all over the world. It's the 1980s. Post 1980s, the returns to education in almost every country, barring the US. Because in the US, the only relevant education level that differentiates people is higher education. It means that there is something in the change in the production structure of the world that actually now rewards university completion much more than what is in the. So there is, to answer your question, whether there's a change in the way these results should be looked, Yes, there is a change. Right? There is a change, and that's got to do with the primacy of which sector that we are looking at. The second point you raise is much more fundamental. The second point is, I think, it's got to do with whether wages reflect productivity or not. Okay? Empirical evidence on that is mixed. People have tried models of looking at bargaining solutions, where there are unions, whether you actually for the same work, whether you get higher wages or not. People have tried to evaluate whether informal sector people definitely get lower wages or not. Put to econometric tests, the results are, I would say, not as firm as we think they are, but it shows that for many sectors that is true. Whether that's so, if you believe that, then come from the income side or even the consumption side on GDP, then you will start asking if GDP is a relevant number or not. So then what is the metric? If you use consumption, it will also be subject to the same bias. So there has to be some way of evaluating this. So I take your view. It may be true. But it's very hard to figure out what does it mean to be productive but not getting income, and what is its impact on the macro economy. It's easy to say that at the individual level, but what is the impact of that on the macro economy? I think it's a harder thing to measure. So I do not know. I mean, I acknowledge your point, but I have nothing to say on that. Yeah, it's a possibility that then we have to look at all these standard things that we use to evaluate success, prosperity, and so on. So on the last point, I think that yes, and I think higher education. One of the reasons why I make the presentations is I feel that there is a increased idea that higher education is a elite thing, especially if you are going to be a low value area. We should focus only on a few people to produce growth, and the rest, they can have good schooling better than us. I don't think that's true. I think that narrative is built up over time. And it's built over time because education systems are very unequal for a long, long time. Right? I think that it's time to kind of also, with these results, tell the government that look, you also have to put money, get people, you have to put money in because higher education is an important part. It is just not an elitist concept that people should go to universities. A lot of people tell me that. So why should you go to universities? Can they use people don't? Will get to Harvard dropout? Will get to the Harvard dropout? Will they well? We need to build companies. I think we need to think beyond Bill Gates.
Before that, and
Why do you? I think that it is not interesting because a lot of people think it's mostly all these appreciate that you are doing wrong. You really want to become more often with it. It's really like we can just do it. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here for giving vote of thanks. I'm really happy to give vote of thanks. I'm going to Vice Chancellor, Professor Peter Rao on the stage, along with Vice Chancellor, Professor Abhiroop Mukhopadhyay, Dean of School of Economics, San Vijay, and colleagues and students. On behalf of the School of Economics, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to Vice Chancellor, Professor P.J. Rao, for chairing this Golden Jubilee second distinguished lecture. Thank you very much, sir. I also thank for your interventions, which are very useful to understand the lecture in deepest manner. I would also like to thank Professor Abhiroop Mukhopadhyay for his thought-provoking lecture on human capital in India, benefits old and new. This is important in the sense that we have been thinking about the human development in Indian context for a very long period, and mostly we were thinking about increasing the educational levels across the social groups, across the states, across the rural and urban areas. But we need to come up with some more better quality initiatives in Indian context. So, I request Professor Abhiroop to express our sincere thanks for your valuable contributions and leading this particular lecture and we hope to have a pleasure of welcoming you again in the future and look forward to more knowledge sharing opportunities. Uh, uh, I would also like to thank the ROE, Directorate and Professor Ghanshyam Krishna for their generous support in funding this particular event. Adding to this, thanks to the Office of PR, the State Center, for registering the event. And finally, I thank you to the faculty, Office of the School of Economics, students, and audience for being here and contributing to the success of this lecture. Thank you very much. To Professor I request Vice Chancellor to so, thank you very much, everyone, for being here.
लग रहा है कि एक वायर और जाना पड़ेगा 2 एक्स्ट्रा के लिए कैमरे अरे वीसी है फोटो में Okay, thank you.